Hello, Anjali madam. Hello.
Yes, yes, Balaji, please tell
Yes, yes,
me.
it is started live. It's
Okay.
fine. Anjali ma'am.
G.
See, there is one option for attendees. There are 14 people joined, right? View all attendees, right?
Yes, I can see
Okay.
the attendees list.
Click that view all attendees. There you can see the list of attendees who are all who are all joined as a
In this
participant
program, right?
in
Yeah,
the
yes, I
program.
can see
See,
them.
yes, if any panelists are joined in the attendees, now you have to find out. You just click their click click on the top of the name.
Okay.
You will get the option for make panelist.
Okay.
This is the one of the option. If any panelist joined as a attendee, you have to convert. This is the procedure.
Okay. Okay, I'll do it.
You got it, right? You got it.
Yes, I got it. I'll
Yes.
do it. Hmm.
Fine.
Thank you. Hello?
हाँ सर, जी सर। सर वो एक वेबिनार है ना, वही वाला 3 सर। इसमें हेलो,
आवाज क्लियर है सर आपकी?
हेलो,
हेलो, गुप्ता जी आवाज क्लियर है आपकी?
हेलो।
हेलो,
हाँ, एम आई ऑडिबल?
हाँ यस सर क्लियर है।
जी जी, थैंक यू थैंक यू। कुछ वो टेक्निकल इशू कुछ हो रहा था। सो आई कैन सी नीरज सिन्हा सर। डॉक्टर सिन्हा नमस्कार।
वीडियो ऑन कर लीजिए।
Good afternoon, Sinha sir. And I see here Dr. Datta also. Welcome, Dr. Datta.
Yeah. Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. I hope I'm audible.
Ji, sir. You are audible, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll mute myself again.
Ji, sir. ठीक। Good afternoon. Now I can see Dr. Sujit Kumar sir also. Good afternoon, Dr. Sujit Kumar sir.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon.
And welcome. Thank you. Thank you for making it possible to join.
Thank you.
मैं एक बार सेक्रेटरी साहब को कर लेता हूँ, then we can start. साहब को ज्वाइन करना है ना, ठीक है.
Good afternoon, Professor Gupta.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, sir.
Namaskar, sir.
Namaskar. Namaskar.
Yes, sir.
Do we wait for some time or?
Just 1 minute, sir.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Okay.
Mr. Balaji, can you allow my video?
Sir, it is
Allow the
already
video of panelists.
no,
Thank
sir,
you.
it is already allowed, sir. Now only we have started the video.
Thank
Right
you.
now-
Thank you.
Yeah, now we can able to see your video.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And Secretary sir is also here. So,
Yes.
in fact, our ED and IDM, he is trying to join. Some technical problem he's facing. So maybe in few minutes he will join. So he suggested that we can start since our Secretary sir is also here. So a very good afternoon to all at this occasion. This is a very special occasion, as this particular webinar is focusing on very important theme under the Prime Minister's agenda, 10-point agenda on disaster risk management that he had given while he inaugurated the 7th ASEAN Ministerial Conference on disaster risk reduction, where more than 54 heads of the nations joined this conference in Delhi in December 2016. The strategic and scientific importance of the 10-point agenda on disaster risk reduction that our Honorable Prime Minister had given based on his own experience of dealing with disasters in the state and also at the national level, and also the experience globally and also in the region. That the agenda provides an integrated approach for implementing not only the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction, but also along with it, the issues and to achieve the objectives under Paris Climate Agreement, and also the journey towards achieving SDGs. So this is very important. And the agenda, the item 5 of the 10-point agenda, that is on leveraging technology for disaster risk management, particularly on focusing on improving the efficiency of various activities under disaster risk management is very important. And if we make an audit of various science and technology options, various science and technology initiatives in this direction, we find that the journey has been very significant and fruitful. And as we have today with us the chairperson of the inaugural session and this webinar, Shri GVV Sharma Saab, who is the secretary, member secretary of National Disaster Management Authority. National Disaster Management Authority is the key institution of Government of India as an apex authority on all the aspects of disaster risk management, developing policies, plans, and guidelines. So thank you, sir, for making it possible to join and to grace this occasion. We have the panelists, a number of expert panelists who are internationally renowned experts on various subjects and also representing strategically important institutions. We have with us Dr. Ravi Sinha, who is professor of IIT Bombay, who had recently hosted the World Disaster Management Congress also in the IIT campus just 2 years before. He is a well-known expert on not only in earthquake, but also on other dimensions of disaster risk management. We have Dr. Neeraj Sinha, who is advisor at Niti Aayog, looking after various dimensions of science and technology. Earlier, he was advisor with the Office of Principal Scientific Advisor of Government of India. Dr. Shailesh Agarwal, Executive Director of Building Material Technology Promotion Council, who was supposed to join, but he has extended his video talk, so he will be with us by that. We have Dr. Sujit Kumar Singh, Director of National Center for Disease Control. Since this theme becomes very, very important for all of us as the current period we are witnessing this coronavirus pandemic, and that has given a new dimension to our understanding of disaster and disaster risk management as well. So his participation is also equally important. And we have from Department of Science and Technology, Government of India, Dr. Devpriya Datta, a head and scientist G advisor of Natural Resource Data Management Systems, Department of Science and Technology being the nodal ministry on various dimensions of science and technology. So, and our executive director will also be joining shortly, Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal. The key issues which have emerged based on a kind of a brief audit of the science and technology efforts for disaster risk management in the country, that there are certain scientific domains, the potential of which has been explored to some significant level. For example, the application of communication technology, the application of space technology, and to some extent the application of geotechnology, construction technology. But technology and science is a vast gamut of domains. So there are two things which have emerged based on the kind of lessons that we have drawn from preparedness and risk management for various kind of disasters under various geographical settings, and also under the impact of climate change implications aggravating this kind of risk, that we have to also look at other sciences, other domains of sciences and technology, and also we have to look at the transdisciplinarity and the interdisciplinarity of the sciences, and the disciplines which offer this kind of blend or this kind of integration. So those kind of sciences, then converting this blend of various science and technology for strengthening governance and management. So these kind of things are also emerging equally in our understanding of leveraging science and technology for disaster risk management. So with this prelude, we recently hosted an international conference, also e-conference, that was also inaugurated by our Honorable Minister for Science and Technology, and Dr. Harshvardhan. And GVV Sharma sir had graced the inaugural function and delivered the special address during that. And one point that emerged, that science, currently India is working on the new version of the science and technology policy. So under the broad gamut of science and technology for India, a new recommendation has come up as from that conference, that we should also come up with science and technology policy for disaster risk management. So that is also the lesson. So with this prelude, I take this opportunity to welcome Shri GVV Sharma sir, Honorable Member Secretary of NDMA, for his inaugural and keynote address. So over to you, Sharma sir.
Good afternoon, Professor Anil Gupta,
Sir.
Professor Ravi Sinha, Dr. Sujit Singh, and all the distinguished panelists and participants. I am very happy that National Institute of Disaster Management is bringing out this series of webinars on each of the agenda points of the Prime Minister's 10-point agenda on disaster risk management. It is an extremely welcome effort, and we have also seen that widespread participation and very good quality of discussions has been happening, and I do hope that these deliberations will go a long way in overall building up the capacities for resilience in India in the field of disaster management. I would like to begin by stating that interventions of science and technology in disaster management is nothing new. It has been happening, they have been happening for quite some time. But what is important in the present context is that we would like to see whether the science and technology efforts are happening in a people-centered manner. The people-centric approach is the key. It is agreed and it is understood that scientifically it is possible, and there are certain limitations whereby we are able to give a prediction that on such and such river, at such and such river gauge, the danger level is at such and such, and the water is flowing 2 feet above the danger level. We agree the technological challenges in coming up to this stage is one aspect. But the second aspect, and which is more important from the people's point of view, is if the water is flowing 2 feet above the danger level, how does it translate into whether it will come to my village, which villages will be inundated, and which are the areas where people have to be evacuated. So these are the areas of my concern. If I am a villager, if I am a community, my concern will be that I will expect the science and technology to give me these last mile solutions also. It is not sufficient simply to say that, okay, our job is over because in our website we have communicated something. No, we have to go till the last mile and see in what manner we interact with the community and intimate the community in a user-friendly manner. And in the process, how do we equip the disaster managers, whether they are government officials or other professionals, how the disaster managers are better informed regarding the possible areas. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So regarding the possible areas of inundation, etc. So not only for flood hazard, for different hazards, we have to see how the efforts of science and technology are actually going to the last mile and reaching the community. And in this context, I would like to mention that National Disaster Management Authority has been working on a theme for what is called Common Alerting Protocol for dissemination of the early warnings issued by various authorities. This Common Alerting Protocol is an ambitious project where we would like to have a mechanism whereby an ongoing television program, whether it is a Doordarshan program or a private TV channel program, would also be interrupted and an alert would be given if there is an important disaster management related alert. Similarly, that alert should also go to the national highways, the toll plazas, wherever you have the communication boards with the public. Similarly, the railway stations. Similarly, the metro train, inside the metro train, in whatever manner the communication is possible, through All India Radio, through television, other means. Apart from all that, how in an integrated manner, the common alerting protocol as per the world accepted standards, how those messages will be disseminated, preferably in the local Indian language. This is the project on which we have been working on, and on a pilot basis in Tamil Nadu, we have started implementing last year. But the integration with other departments has to happen. There also, we need actually continued support and participation of all nodal agencies. Similarly, NDMA has been working on a theme of having a common emergency number, the number 112, for any citizen to alert the concerned authorities on emergency related to disasters. Right now, as many of you may be aware, 112 number is available, but it is available for emergencies related to ambulance or fire or police or women's safety. These are the broad areas in which the 112 number is covered. But the 112 at present does not cover emergencies related to disasters, because as you know, all messages related to disasters may not be immediate emergency. Because disaster, okay, water is coming and there is a warning of 4 days and you may have to evacuate. That kind of a message may not be an action, a message which requires an emergent action, a life-saving situation. So therefore, for 112 number, how to identify such life-saving, very, very important emergency-related messages pertaining to disaster management, how to integrate them with this 112 portal. This is also one area on which we have been working. And I would also like to mention in this context that IMD, Central Water Commission, INCOIS, and other agencies have been working on the what is called the impact forecasting. And impact forecasting is extremely important, as I have mentioned, in a people-centric manner, how the impact is actually communicated. I would like to mention in this context, if you take the cyclone hazard, as you know, broadly, cyclone leads to 3 kinds of problems. One is because of high wind velocity, the structures will go and semi-pakka or kacha structures will fly away, the roofs will go. All that will happen because of high wind velocity. That is one. And second is due to very high precipitation. Heavy rainfall takes place, which may lead to floods. And the third thing that can happen is storm surge, where because of the surge, sometimes the water, instead of flowing from the river into the sea, there is a possibility that the reverse flow will happen. And in the process, the people who are living on the banks of the rivers will have danger. Now, at present, we have mechanism where all these 3 aspects are given with reasonably good advance warning by the IMD. But NDMA has been working with IMD and INCOIS in order to see whether this also can be enhanced further, and impact-based assessment for storm surge can be given in a more meaningful manner at the community level. This is also one project on which we have been working, and very soon we will be ready to launch this. I would like to mention that the potentials of use of science and technology are immense in disaster management. If you talk about, as you know, as many of the distinguished participants would be aware, that in many of the hazards, we have something called techno-legal regime. We would like to enforce what is called the techno-legal regime, whether it is in the context of unauthorized occupation along the river embankments, or whether it is in the context of doing buildings in unauthorized places, or doing constructions without proper conformity with the building codes. All these areas, the enforcement mechanism has to work. And for enforcement mechanism to work, it is not sufficient to simply say that on such and such aspect, the political or administrative will is not there. Therefore, such and such thing cannot be done. There have been very effective, very innovative solutions which have been found in different parts of the governance, where the e-governance programs are designed in such a manner that whether you like it or not, there is no way you can bypass the computerized system of governance. Therefore, if you have end-to-end solution which is completely controlled and which is mentioned and which is driven by the computer, it would be possible that whether you have the will or not, you have no option but to enforce the law. So therefore, e-governance mechanisms are also one way of using the advances in computer technology, computer and information technology, to see that the efficiency with which the techno-legal regime is enforced, that efficiency can be increased. Similarly, in floodplain zoning also, there is tremendous role in which technology can play. Similarly, Honorable Prime Minister has released the Vulnerability Atlas of BMTPC a couple of years ago. It is necessary to discuss how it is actually getting used, whether it is being used for development planning, whether not only in the limited context of housing, but also in other areas, whether the Vulnerability Atlas can be used, and what are the areas in which science and technology developments can be further implemented, can be further utilized for preparing hazard, risk, vulnerability maps, addressing different hazards in different parts of the country. Similarly, whether drones can be used, whether the drone technology can be used for, let us say, mitigating forest fire. In some parts of the country, last year attempts have been made to see whether the advanced information pertaining to forest fire can be obtained using drones, and whether the mitigation work also can be done using these unmanned aerial vehicles. Similarly, whether drones can be used in other parts of disaster management, including flood rescue efforts. These are all some of the important ways in which science and technology can help the cause of disaster risk management. And I would like to mention that, as most of you would be aware, India has developed a robust institutional mechanism in the form of the law, the Disaster Management Act 2005, where the responsibility for all aspects of disaster management have been given not to just one ministry, but to every single ministry, every single department of Government of India, and also every state government. As you know, every ministry of Government of India is required to prepare a holistic disaster management plan under Section 37 of the Act, by which not only the prevention, mitigation, the actual capacity building, the response work, the post-response activities, recovery, reconstruction, all these aspects will have to be carefully gone into based on the rules of business of each department. That is one important area in which each department can also help in what manner science and technology can be leveraged for updating and making their disaster management plans of the ministries more robust. I think the deliberations of today will be very, very helpful in further fulfilling the vision of Honorable Prime Minister and Chairman of NDMA. And I once again thank NIDM for having given me this opportunity. I thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your very strategically drawn and very sound address to all of us. That is a kind of a guiding, those provide us guiding lines for today's discourse, and also that feeds very important insights for our line of action for enabling science and technology strengthening for disaster risk management. You rightly said that the science and technology application, besides the domain of inventions and innovations should also link to people-centric approach, and there we have to see that how the benefits are reaching to the user level, and that interface is very important. And therefore we are now looking at how the interface between science, policy and practice is becoming important day by day. So thank you very much for sir for providing this insight. And now with your permission, I would like to move to our distinguished panelists of the day that have been drawn from kind of a background of luminary experience and the institutions which have been contributing very significantly on science policy domains, and also in promoting various dimensions of technological innovations and planning support as well. As you as Sharma sir also referred to the disaster management plan of various ministries. Now NDMA has taken very significant strides in promoting and supporting various ministries in developing their plans. A number of ministries have already developed their plans, and other ministries are already preparing. In fact, now we are pursuing with Science and Technology Ministry also, because Science and Technology Ministry has number of laboratories, and number of laboratories have very important functions assigned to them. And beside this, very costly and expensive kind of equipments are also there. So how to safeguard those, and how the ministry's activities are contributing towards disaster risk management. So the entire business of ministry, and similarly for other ministries, these kind of things are important. So now moving on to the first distinguished panelist of today's expert panel, Professor Ravi Sinha sir. Professor Ravi Sinha sir is a well-known expert on earthquake risk mitigation, but not limited to earthquake risk mitigation, but a vast gamut of other hydrometeorological, geological, and in fact all kind of disasters he has been contributing significantly. And he has also been contributing to the domains of policy planning, particularly for technology, leveraging technology for disaster risk management. So it is our opportunity to listen to Professor Ravi Sinha. Over to you, sir, Ravi Sinha sir.
Thank you, Professor Gupta, and thank you so much for inviting me here. Can I share a presentation?
Yes, sir. I think, yeah, Balaji, please see the rights. You can share, sir.
No, not yet.
Anjali, you give sharing rights to all the panelists.
While I wait for that, I would like to express my thanks to NIDM and also to NDMA for carrying this very important part of Prime Minister's agenda forward. So in 21st century, the key characteristic differentiating this century from any other in the history of humanity and mankind is the fact that this is the century of science, technology, and knowledge. So everything which leverages this is what is going to keep us in our place and make us move forward. And that is also equally applicable to disaster risk management in terms of our ability to do better. So I will just share a very short presentation to give some of my insights into what are the opportunities for science-based approach. And I'm looking at disaster risk management in a more holistic way, so that it would have something for everybody to do to make ourselves safer, to make our families and communities safer, and of course to make our nation safer. Quite often people feel that disaster risk management starts after a disaster, and it starts and ends with application of common sense or past experience to manage something which was unexpected or undesirable. Unfortunately, as science in this field shows quite clearly, that common sense is very uncommon. So if we have to rely on common sense, that is the point of failure to begin with, even under normal circumstances. And then secondly, again, a whole body of human knowledge in the last 50 years shows that under stress, even very smart people become stupid. And the reasons are neurological, physiological, as well as psychological changes which occur in human body. And primarily they lead to cortical inhibition, which badly affects the ability to take decisions accurately. So to be able to stand on their feet and think on their feet and take the right decision is something which has never happened in the history of humanity, and it is not going to ever happen in the history of humanity. Human race is not capable of doing it. So if you want to do well in the event of extreme stress, which is typically what happens in disasters, then we have to do by being prepared, by being well rehearsed, and by having protocols in place to act and not to have to think at that time of what to do. So that is really the goal of science and technology in disaster risk management. So the expertise and knowledge which can be generated through the introduction of science and technology can improve risk management and reduce the impact of disasters. And for major disasters, this is perhaps the most valuable contributor to reducing the risk. So moving forward, if you want to reduce the risk, we have to also understand the difference between a hazard and a risk. So hazard is a cause, an event or something which may lead to a disaster or which has led to a disaster. But then that has to act on people, built environment, economy, and so on, which is broadly categorized as vulnerability. And then this impact on people and all has to be adverse, which is known as exposure. So if you want to do disaster risk management, then the risk has all these three components. And to manage the disaster risk, we can take actions to reduce all three of them. Under some kind of hazards, only some things could be done. In some other hazards, something else could be done. But opportunities are there in different hazards to work on different one of these. Again, in the gamut of use of science and technology, all three of them become our target in order to cumulatively affect the risk of damage and loss to the people. So coming again to risks, we seem to feel that we know all risks which we are exposed to. But actually, it turns out that the risks are of four kinds. What are known as the known knowns. So these are the risks where we already have reasonable knowledge. Then the known unknowns, where we know that there is a risk, but we don't know what is going to happen. Then unknown knowns, this is the interesting one, where the people who have to take the decision don't have information or knowledge, but then there are others who have knowledge and information. And if it is possible to connect to them, then suddenly that knowledge will open like a floodgate of new ideas and new opportunities to act. And lastly is the unknown unknown, which is totally unfathomable. And the course of human history, again, the history which is available for the last 5,000 to 6,000 years shows that primarily it's the last two, the unknown knowns and the unknown unknowns, which have strongly affected the course of human civilizations, which have led to very successful civilizations to their ruin. And in order to ensure that history does not get repeated, these are the ones which we have to very strongly focus on when we are looking at use of science and technology. So what I was saying, if I can just put it in words, is that in known knowns, we can improve what we are doing through the use of knowledge which is already there. In the known unknowns, so for example, earthquake risk. So we know where all the earthquakes are going to occur, reasonably know. But we don't know how large, we don't know when, we don't know what is going to be the impact, we don't know what is going to be the effect of the impact. So they can be studied, and based on that, we can identify the extremely weak points and try to strengthen them. Then the unknown and unknown knowns. So, for example, in the case of COVID or other these kind of pandemics, so there are bodies of knowledge available, but the bodies of knowledge and the people who have to act on them are not always connected. And lastly, it's the unknown unknown, which is what is known as a black swan event. So they are totally unfathomable. We cannot imagine using traditional ways and be ready for them. So we have to do very well in the other three so that if we are suddenly hit with something which is beyond the scope of imagination, then we are still able to handle it. So science and technology has a role in all of them. And the role with science and technology is different within the government body and outside the government body. So in the government body, science and technology should primarily feed into having the right inputs for policy making and for improving or preparing strategies to implement the policy. Then to a certain extent for the programs which are drawn from the strategies, and of course the projects which are implemented in the government. Outside of the government, again, science and technology has a very strong role, but it is reversed. Primarily, science and technology should be used to improve the execution of the projects or to have projects which are making sense, which are sort of providing the returns on the investments, the programs on which the projects are built, then the strategies, and in a very limited way, policy. So the government is the biggest stakeholder to use the policy, use science and technology for policy. That's why it makes sense that the government is the biggest contributor to development of science and technology. And this is not just in disaster risk management, this is in general in human civilization. And that is why in all the major countries of the world, notwithstanding any amount of investments which are being made by the private sector, it's the government investment which drives the growth of science and technology in the country. So focusing again on disaster risk management, the government supported science and technology in India has in the past very strongly focused on the advancement of science in a broad sense, so advancement of new knowledge, let's say. And it has a fairly successful track record. So in terms of new knowledge, in terms of science, in terms of people with global scientific reputation, India actually stands in the bracket of the topmost countries, and we should be very proud of that. And people in the academics like us and NIDM are indeed very proud of that. But that is not the only role of science and technology in DRM. So disaster risk management requires many, many different things from science and technology. So of course, we want to have advancement of science. So for example, if I just take the example of earthquake risk, then we want to understand the seismic characteristics in different parts of country. So we want to understand what are not just the areas where the large earthquakes are likely to occur, but also much more deeper knowledge, so that it's a deeper knowledge which can be used for policy making. Then we need to have an improvement of knowledge on the basis of the advancement of science. So for example, in India, let us say, do we we would like to know all sources which can produce an earthquake of more than magnitude 6.5. And 6.5, I'm just saying as a number, it's a kind of number which is likely to result in 10,000 or more deaths. So do we have the knowledge of all those sources which can produce this kind of an earthquake? The answer is no. So this is not advancement of science in the sense that the people who do this work, that work is not going to get published in major international journals and get accolades for the author. But if we don't know, then we are not able to understand what are the hotspots where we need to take special action as against in general taking action to reduce earthquake risk. Then the third role of science and technology is communication of science and knowledge to a vast gamut of users of that knowledge. And so, for example, to peers, which scientists do all the time, as well as to policymakers, to the decision makers, to all stakeholders, in fact, for the society as a whole. But different stakeholders have different requirements, and the communication has to be suitably tailored to meet their requirement. Fourthly, we need to have the ability, and science and technology has a role in it, for the adoption of the science and knowledge. So, for example, based on the knowledge of seismic risk, could we have better seismic zoning? And then based on the seismic zoning, could we have better decisions of investment? So, for example, if in a highly seismic area, there is a major investment going, has the investment taken sufficient countermeasures to ensure that under that kind of a seismic risk, this is not going to get damaged adversely, and so on. Then fifth, we need the science and knowledge to improve technology tools and products. So, for example, we need more durable construction materials, we need less greenhouse gas emitting materials, and so on. The sixth, we need technology-led innovations. So not just the improvement, but innovations in tools and products. So for example, brand new technology to do something which we have not been able to do so far, or a better way of doing something, a more cost-effective way of doing something, and so on. And lastly, science and technology has a role to translate the technology-led innovations into businesses and industries. because unless people benefit, and people will benefit only when the technology comes inside their houses and into their lives. So unless people are benefiting, then unless we do that, the gain out of science and technology is very partial. And in the context of India, we have been doing very well in advancement of science. The policy-led focus on these other 6 aspects have been less. And the Prime Minister's agenda is actually providing us that, at least in the field of disaster risk management, which can potentially result in a life and death difference to people. Over there, we have to have a more holistic view, and that we should be able to look at these things more cogently, and based on that, we can take action. And lastly, I would just like to show one particular data, that if you look at patents by country, and I'm just putting 4 countries over here, us and 3 of the global leaders, and also look at the science and technology publications, so the advancement of science, then the data is very revealing, and actually it's very uncomfortable for us as a nation. So if you look at the patents, and these are not just patents by the residents of the country, these are the patents where even one patent holder had an address in that particular country. And these are global patents, not just the patent in the country whose name is mentioned over there. So India had about 50,000 patents. Japan had about 3,20,000 patents. China had about 13 lakh patents, and US had about 6 lakh patents in 2017. If you look at the peer-reviewed science and engineering publications in again globally, then India had about 1,22,000. India, I think, was ranked number 3. Japan had about 1 lakh. China had about 4,73,000. US had 4,32,000. Why these are important is because this column shows what has been the success in advancing science, and this column shows what has been the success in developing science-led intellectual wealth. So if you look at the ratio of the new intellectual wealth to the advancement of science, then if you just look at the data, then you will see how much we have to catch up. So it doesn't mean that we reduce this. We are number 4. We should be proud of that, and we should continue to do that. But we have to massively increase our investment in so that we can do this much more. So with this, I would like to just sum up and say that we have been traditionally taking very good steps in advancing science and contributing to the global body of knowledge. But we also need to develop more intellectual wealth, because unless we do that, our people are not going to benefit from the scientific community as much as they could have. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Ravi Sinha, sir. And I think this is a very clear-cut and very important message, that translating science and technology into deliverables are the implementable format, and for that whatever knowledge is being generated, whatever research is being generated, how it is going towards the application within industry and within the field, whether in the sector of agriculture, whether in the sector of industry, whether in the sector of manufacturing and all. So this is very important and very loud message to all of us, that how academia, industry, governance, and the ground level implementers, this linkage is appearing is very important. And very correctly, the next luminary speaker at this occasion is Dr. Neeraj Sinha, who is advisor in Niti Aayog dealing with science and technology. Niti Aayog being one of the apex institution of the country on all the aspects of policy making related with development and governance. So it is good opportunity to listen to him, because recently he has been also working on the science and technology development issues for DRR also. So welcome Dr. Neeraj Sinha at this occasion, and I request you to throw light on this issue from your point of views. Dr. Sinha, please.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. First of all, a big thank you to you, to Mr. Ashish Panda, to all other colleagues in the National Institute of Disaster Management for having invited me on behalf of the NITI Aayog to speak on this very important topic. Actually, my brush with the disaster risk mitigation dates back to almost the year 2002, when I had just joined as a scientist in the office of the Principal Scientific Advisor to the Government of India. And the Oil and Natural Gas Corporation Limited, which now is called the ONGC Limited, had approached the then PSA, Dr. R. Chidambaram, the then Principal Scientific Advisor to the Government of India, with a problem on oil spill management. Now, oil spill management is something which sounds very innocuous. It sounds very harmless, I mean, what damage is an oil spill going to do to human beings? Well, frankly and thankfully, there is no loss of life that happens when there is an oil spill off the coast of any country. But the economic damage is so intense and so huge at times that livelihoods get severely affected. And it is not just livelihoods of the fishermen who are living off marine life in the coastal areas of any given country. It is also tourism that gets very severely affected. And the damage that is caused to the beaches, the damage that is caused to some structures, some heritage structures like we have in Mahabalipuram off the coast of Kalpakkam, very close to Chennai. I mean, it can be huge and it can be monumental as well. So why I thought I'll just touch upon the subject is that while the National Disaster Response Agency for oil spills is the Indian Coast Guard, when we started our consultations way back in 2002, we realized that the Indian Coast Guard has only capabilities to, fight disasters arising out of oil spills to a tonnage of 100 tons. And in their language, it was called the Tier 2 oil spill. The Tier 1 oil spill is less than 100. The Tier 2 oil spill is about 100 to 200 metric tons of oil. And anything more than that was called the Tier 3 oil spill, which we didn't have any capabilities within India to handle. So as we gradually learned, there were international consortia that handle oil spills of the large variety. And Indian oil companies, especially ONGC and even the Reliance group of companies, were members of different such consortia to take care of oil spill, if at all they happen, because of oil being moved by these companies. So we had ended up writing a very nice report after multi-stakeholder organizations had met us over several meetings. And these stakeholders included the Ministry of Shipping, the Indian Coast Guard, of course, the scientific ministries and departments, the Ministry of Environment and Forests. And at that time, the NDMA was not created, so the NDMA was not there. But then we had the Directorate General of Shipping, and of course the MHA was represented as well. And we had ended up writing a very nice report on this subject, which was considered by the Committee of Secretaries twice, once in December 2003 and the next time in June 2005. And based on the persistent efforts of the PS's office, we were able to get oil spill management included as a subject in the roster of duties of the NDMA. And by then, of course, after the tsunami of 2004, the NDMA had been formed, and the MHA also had a national disaster management cell, or whatever it is called. And that is how we were able to get this on the map of India. So that was just a small, brief, introduction to how I got involved with science and technology being used for disaster risk mitigation or disaster risk management. Now, as we all know, reducing the severity of natural hazards is not possible. I mean, the severity remains, but the main opportunity for reducing risk lies in reducing vulnerability and exposure both. So reducing these two components of risk requires identifying and reducing the underlying drivers of risk. And we should be addressing these underlying drivers of risk and consequently maintain the sustainability of development. Now, India, as we all know, has been traditionally vulnerable to natural disasters on account of its very unique geoclimatic conditions and the fact that our coastline is almost 7,000 kilometers long. And 7,000 kilometers is, I mean, people don't realize this, but it's a very long coastline that we have. So floods and cyclones and Tsunami, fortunately, has happened only once, but then earthquakes and landslides have been a recurrent phenomenon. Now, post the tsunami of 2004, we now have a very robust mechanism in the Government of India, led by the National Disaster Management Authority, to take care of eventualities that will happen because of all kinds of disasters. We have a National Disaster Response Force, and of course, we have the National Institute of Disaster Management, which is now hosting this very important webinar. Now, amongst the scientific institutes that have played a major role in extending scientific and technology measures to mitigate and to manage disasters is the National Institute, or rather the National Center for Ocean and Information Services, which is popularly called as INCOIS, INCOIS, in Hyderabad. It's a autonomous institute of the Ministry of Earth Sciences. And as everyone knows, they had played a very major role in setting up the tsunami early warning system after the disaster of December 26, 2004. And I don't need to really recount what had happened, but we all know that the damage was huge, and it was not in India alone, it was across the entire Southeast Asia and Far East Asia as well. Now, we know that the Indian National Center for Ocean Information Services, INCOIS, as I just said, has developed an Indian tsunami early warning system, which comprises of a real-time network of seismic stations, bottom pressure recorders, tide gauges, and 24/7 operational tsunami warning center. Now, this warning center will detect tsunami-genic earthquakes, and it will monitor their movement, and it will also provide timely advisories to vulnerable communities by means of latest communication methods with the backend support of scenario database, vulnerability modeling, and decision support system. Now, and by the way, I'm proud to say that the Indian tsunami early warning system is considered to be amongst the most advanced early warning systems in the world. The warning center is capable of issuing tsunami bulletins in less than 10 minutes after any major earthquake in the Indian Ocean. And this translates to providing a response or a lead time of about 10 to 20 minutes for near source regions and a few hours in the case of far source regions. Now, timely tsunami advisories are disseminated to the vulnerable community using a decision support system which has been developed based on one of its kind standard operating procedure, which is wholly indigenous. Now, we know that currently Warning Center disseminates tsunami advisories to various stakeholders through multiple dissemination modes. It could be a simple phone call, it could be a message by facsimile, it could be emails, it could be an SMS, and it could be a combination of all. So tsunami bulletins as well as real-time sea level observations are also made available on a dedicated website for the general public at large, for the media, for officials of state governments, for officials of the Government of India. And users can also register on the website for receiving earthquake alerts and tsunami bulletins through emails and through SMSs. So this has been a major effort of a scientific ministry of the Government of India. And fortunately, since 2004, we have never really had any major disaster. And if at all, there have been some minor incidences of earthquakes on the ocean floor. They have been warned, they have been detected, and early warning has been issued to the various Indian authorities on time in the past almost 16 years since the first disaster in 2004. Now, the third topic I wanted to touch upon after oil spill managements and after tsunamis is that was already spoken about by Mr. Sharma, but I thought I'll elaborate a little on that because unmanned air vehicles is also a subject on which the NIDM Aayog is working to a very large extent. And the Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor to the Government of India, where I used to work earlier, in fact, had a project to develop unmanned air vehicles that could operate at sub-zero temperatures in the Himalayan regions and could also operate at plus 45 degrees Celsius in the deserts of India. So we know that drones can play a major role in disaster response, and they have been continuously used all over the world in acquiring rapid situational awareness with mapping technology and imagery. Now, the major use cases in utilizing UAVs in disaster management have evolved over the world in the last decade. It's a very recent phenomenon. But let me also draw the attention of all the learned participants in the webinar that although we do have a drone policy in India, it is called, I think, Drone Policy 1.0. We are now collaborating. I mean, NIDM is also trying to put in its bit for developing a more elaborate policy on the use of drones. The only slight bottleneck that is kind of coming in the way off and on is a kind of a tough battle where the Ministry of Civil Aviation says that anything that flies is their responsibility, and rightly so. And the Ministry of Home Affairs says that anything that flies but has a security implication is their responsibility. So, but both the organizations are collaborating of late. Some very, very rapid movement has happened in the creation of a nationwide policy on the use of drones in India. And the Ministry of Civil Aviation and the MHA are collaborating along with the NITI Aayog to develop that policy. Now, we know that drones have been successfully used as early as, I think, about 2 months ago when Rajasthan had been infested with the locusts, and we all know about that. Some of those locusts had also come to some parts of Delhi. And the drones were designed to spray 10 liters of chemicals at a given point of time, along with creating a sound that would disperse the locusts into different areas. So this was very successfully used in Rajasthan. And drones obviously have been used in Delhi to enforce social distancing in the current pandemic, and also for spraying disinfectants. The Delhi police has used drones extensively to keep watch on places like grocery shops, banks, religious places to ensure distancing norms. In Telangana, drones have been equipped with surveillance cameras, and we all know that, and thermal imaging devices for keeping watch on crowds during night time and for monitoring the movement of people, especially in the current pandemic situation. In fact, drones have also been used to, as public address systems when they are equipped with the sky speakers, as we call them, to keep the public informed. Now, we all know that many natural disasters, in fact, most of them, have become more dangerous because of climate change, because of the negatively, should I say, anthropogenic activities of the human population. And this has had a negative impact on the wildlife across the world as well. And today there is a near consensus, although there are different groups which might contest it, but there is a near consensus that, at least among the world scientists, that human activity is causing climate change. Now, disaster risk mitigation, to sum up, is something which is again a multi-stakeholder and a multi-organizational effort. As Dr. Anil Gupta just said, various ministries and departments of the Government of India are now responsible for disaster risk reduction, and the entire effort, of course, is being led by the NDMA. The NITI Aayog is trying to do its bit, as I said, in getting a drone policy, and also at working very closely with the Ministry of Environment and Forests to look at how we can protect our environment, how we can reduce the consequent anthropogenic effects on climate change, and consequently how we can reduce the extreme climatic events that lead to all kinds of disasters. So in order to ensure that technological preparedness for the upcoming disasters is in place, as I was saying, there is a very concerted effort that needs to be taken. And if that is done, and we use high-end technologies like AI, like 5G, and like Internet of Things to use them as early warning tools, I'm sure we will be better prepared and much better prepared than we are today in the coming years. With these words, I just thank the NIDM again, and of course all the participants for having heard me. But while closing, I will underline the importance of being prepared and being very, very prepared using technology for reducing, if not completely obliterating, the impact of disasters on both human population as well as on wildlife and on vegetation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Sinha sir. And in fact, the points that you highlighted are very important, especially from the NITI Aayog, the initiatives that NITI Aayog is taking. And as we have also indicated that as an outcome of this webinar and also the series of other discourses, we propose a strategy paper on science and technology applications for DRR. That can be some kind of a guidance document for our all the science and technology institutions across the country, and also the academic institutions who are into this domain, maybe jointly with the NDMA. So there, in fact, the NITI Aayog's role would be very important, and will come back to you for your insights and inputs in developing that paper also. Now, moving on to this fact that the housing and construction being one of the most important dimensions of disaster resilience, and Building Material Technology Promotion Council, which has been instrumental in developing the Vulnerability Atlas of India. So probably that was the first mapping of risk in India that has been done by BMTPC, and till now also BMTPC map are considered as most relevant reference maps along with the other vulnerability mapping and risk mapping kind of things. So Dr. Shailesh Agarwal, who could not join personally, but his video message is with us, where he has referred about the latest development of the Atlas that he has recently presented in the ministry also. So I would request Sri Balaji to play his message. So Balaji. Anjali? Dr. Anjali?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Can we play his message? Are we playing his video? Or yes, now we can see. So we listened to Dr. Agarwal, who personally had agreed to join and was willing to join, but due to some urgent engagement, he had to reschedule his participation, and he extended his message. And this message is clear and important to all of us. Now, the very pertinent thing, as past 5 months, what we have been witnessing is the coronavirus pandemic. And in fact, if we look at the Sendai framework for DRR, so Sendai framework is different and has a certain distinction as compared to the Hugo framework for DRR by bringing certain specific elements. For example, one is relating with the quantitative parameters for monitoring and setting the quantitative targets. But besides this, bringing the health sector resilience or the health infrastructure issues at the forefront of the resilience efforts. And this has been witnessed while dealing with this coronavirus pandemic, because a pandemic has earlier not been considered as disaster, but in our country this time it has been dealt as a disaster, and it has been notified as a disaster, and the disaster management system has been operational along with the health fraternity. And therefore the participation of Director of National Center for Disease Control, Dr. Sujit Kumar Singh, on behalf of Ministry of Health becomes very, very important on health science and medical science domain point of view, that how these aspects are becoming very important for overall disaster resilience at all the levels. So I welcome you, Dr. Sujit Kumar. Do we see Dr. Sujit Kumar? I think Dr. Anjali एक बार call कर लीजिए, then we'll move to another panelist, and then by that time we can listen to him. Dr. Anjali, please make a call to him. Then we'll move to Department of Science and Technology, Dr. Devpriya Datta. Dr. Datta is working with National Natural Resources Data Management System. And as we have been discussing a lot about mapping, and that is very important dimension, particularly in vulnerability and risk mapping, as the Prime Minister's Agenda 10 itself talks aloud about risk mapping globally. And in fact, the message from Dr. P.K. Mishra in the webinar series on first item also indicated about the synergies between various different agenda of with different items under Prime Minister's Agenda 10-point agenda. So this is also an example that how one point is important for other. So how science and technology is important for contributing towards achieving the objective set under that item that deals with risk mapping globally. So and beside this, other domains of science and technology that deals with climate risk management, that also deals with the Science and Engineering Research Council, that also deals with science and society programs, and there are technology transfer kind of things. TechTech is also working under DST. So now over to Dr. Datta to listen to him. Yeah, Dr. Datta, please.
Yeah, good evening, and thank you, Dr. Professor Gupta. But I will really appreciate if I allow me to share my presentations, because I just made my thoughts across presentation. So I really appreciate that.
Dr. Anjali, please make Dr. Datta a presenter.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Dr. Datta, you are a presenter.
Can you see here, Professor Gupta?
Yes,
okay.
yes, please.
Okay. So formally, good evening to Mr. Sharma, the Honorable Secretary General of NIDM, and also Professor Anil Kumar Gupta and my other co-panelists and all the participants. So here I'm going to present on behalf of the Department of Science and Technology that for the disaster risk management, or in other words, the post-Sendai, the disaster risk reductions, what are the Department of Science and Technology's initiatives are and how we can converge into it. And incidentally, I also look after the Science and Society division of the Department of Science and Technology, and also I look after the state S&T councils. So I think we can find a convergence in all of them in order to strengthen the science and technology. So as all of you know, like the Sendai framework has brought the shift from managing disasters to reducing risk of the DRR, and probably that has given a shift from a more often management perspective to the knowledge infusions perspective, and improve the the importance of the science and technology. If you look into the Sendai framework, the special role of the principles where the S&T has been highlighted is to promote the mainstreaming of disaster risk management to land use policy development, including urban planning, land degradations, non-permanent housing, and use of guidelines to follow up tools informed by anticipated demographic and environmental changes. So there are a lot of the uncertainty to be addressed. I think the S&T role can. So as a result, as you know, we have a national disaster management plan, and we have Prime Minister's agenda, and we are discussing today about the number 5. If, on the other hand, that if we look into the science and technology roadmap, there is parallelly in the using the space technology, there is an United Nations Office of the Disaster Risk Reductions at UNISDR, which talks about the science and technology roadmap for the support of the Sendai framework. And the focus here is mostly on the space technologies, that how it can. The roadmap includes the outcomes, actions, deliverables of the 4 priorities of the Sendai framework for implementations of the science and technology. And there is a Tokyo, statement in 2017. Also, there are 14 action points for the Asian Science and Technology Conference, the disaster risk reductions, which talks about the understanding disaster risk governance, invest in disaster risk reductions, and for resilience, enhance disaster preparedness for effective response to build back. I will quickly go through each of them and then find it out that where are the roles of the S&T, how it has been highlighted here. If we look into the understanding disaster risk, it is not the entirely, it is the science and technology, but this talks about the space disaster risk mapping technologies and strengthening the capacity for using this technology for improved understanding. If we look into the disaster risk governance, it talks about the science policy practice nexus, which already Professor Gupta has highlighted. It talks about interdisciplinary national science and technology plans. When it comes to the investment in the DRR for resilience, it talks about ensuring risk-sensitive investments to enhance the role of the S&T community, and enhance and showcase projects that promote S&T-based DRR and encourage governmental and the social investment in the DRR. Coming to the number 4 point of that they enhance disaster preparedness for effective response to build back better. It talks about promoting the role of multidisciplinary S&T, effective cooperations among the science community and the business sector by utilizing ICT, research innovative and the practical solutions to promote all of the society. So the suggestion is like, this is a framework which is available from the Asian region perspective. And now it is a time from the Indian perspective to look it as a whole and come up with a national plan. And as a result of this webinar, if that is a one of your recommendations, and we start working towards it, we have Dr. Sinha from the Niti Aayog also, and the like all the other science and technology department ministries, the implementation ministries we should work together to have this type of an S&T plans and work to the the different parts of the whole. Now coming to the DST's initiatives, like from the NIDM, as you know, like recently the Natural Resource Data Management System has now been re-christened as a national geospatial program. We have an experience of working in the landslide research and hazard mitigation, the coastal hazard risk assessment, and supporting the forewarning system. And in the context of the landslide hazard mitigations, other than that, working with a very large scale, there is a geological, geotechnical mapping has like taking place in the Uttarakhand, especially at the post 2013 the disaster in Uttarakhand at 1:10,000 scale, and the geometric kinematic dynamic analysis has been done, and there is an GIS framework has been developed, and as a so basically the R&D projects which has been we have supported in the issues like landslide hazards, risk assessment, monitoring of the critical landslide zones, the development of the forewarning systems, and human resource development obviously is a part of that. As a result, like from Rishikesh to Kedarnath, is the entire sections that this type of the geological vulnerability map has been developed, and which we have shared with the district disaster authorities and the district authorities also for the actions and to strengthen their actions to the input of science. We have a program on the coastal hazard and the risk assessment, though recently started, which works with the vulnerability assessment of the coastal erosion, tsunami modeling, the science of the tsunami modeling, and the development of the coastal hazard preventive measures. Also, we have now coming from this managing disasters to the reducing risk, the role of the early warning system is well known, and therefore there is the focus of the early warning systems, which basically helps us to detect and to forecast the imminent hazards, and that helps in the protecting persons and the property or the impact of any disaster. So as you know, that the principal activities is the monitoring, data acquisition, analysis, warning, and the response. So this is the flow diagram of any early warning systems, instrumentations, and then monitoring, analysis, forecasting. So based on that, the landslide early warning systems have been developed in the different geo-environmental conditions in India. I think we have done it in 3 different geo-environmental, the conditions, and which are available here. So there is the data acquisition system. There is selections of the instruments for that, and as this weather early warning systems. The benefit of that we have seen during 2013. The Orissa, the cyclone, the Falin, and subsequently we have seen that this has helped in reducing the impact of the disaster. Similarly, we are working also on the the lightning early warning system. Now, the science and technology, like we have already heard during this discussions, the science and technology is not only the the scientific knowledge and the innovations. It is the innovations which takes place also at the field, and this is from the point of view of the science and society and the field. We have this experience that this is an example from the Gorakhpur Environmental Action Group, which is a core support program under the field divisions. They basically, as you know, like this area is a more flood-prone area. It is the eastern UP area. So, based on the study, the gradient study of that, they have developed a gradient-based farm planning and cropping system. So first they did the mapping at a large scale, and then they introduced here so that the impact can be more precise. And then they made it as a participatory GS-based village micro planning for the drainage management. And as a result, as you see, the villages have adopted this technology for reducing flood and water logging losses. The income of the small and marginal farmers in Uttar Pradesh and Northern Bihar has doubled because of that. Soil erosion has reduced, the soil moisture maintained, area freed from the water logging and get rabi, get available for the rabi season crops on time. The DM of these, the villages have been developed, and this has also strengthened the more scientific basis applications of the Manrega. And on the right hand side, you can see that we discussed about that ultimately all of this also align to the SDGs. And at the field level, we see that this addresses all the 6 SDGs, that is 1, 2, 3, 6, and 13, and 15. So now, as you see, that science and technology is all pervasive, and it has also a value chain. It's from a very basic science, also has a role in the disaster reduction, but application science on the ground. on the ground. So, understanding the importance of that, the DST is, the participating with PICI, DPC, and the Bill Melinda Gates, the foundation in India Disaster Risk Management Innovation Challenge, which is focused on currently the COVID-19 or any this type of biological epidemics. The solutions, the idea here is to have across this, the 6S, that is Shuraksha, the safety, swastha, health and well-being, Sajagata, that is alertness, early warning, Haniyata, that is localization, Sahyata, which is ease of applications, and Samajikata, that is community and the people focus. I think what Mama was talking about, that the SNT should be focused towards the human center of the people focus. So here we are trying to experiment that it will be an open innovation challenge, and which will focus on solutions through the pilot of the prototypes, community driven, and the some of the good innovations identified through them. DST wants to support it through that, and definitely in the process we want to partner with the NIDM and the NDMA so that it can be taken to the application space. So here is the DRM innovations that we are going to start in this end of September. The thematic focus is understanding, addressing risk, and post-pandemic risk. Understanding that even if the UN has a UN, group of geoinformation management, under they have disaster management framework, and in order to implement that in the Indian context, we are under the National Geospatial Program. We invite all of you to take part, especially the NIDM, because if you remember the first day of this webinar, when Dr. Mishra gave the message that the silos should break down, and we want to do that. And thank you very much. Dr. Gupta? Yeah, I'm done. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Datta. Actually, Dr. Sujit Kumar got a call from the secretary on some emergent issue, but anyway, he's trying to join. So in case he's able to join before we complete.
Just 1 second, Dr. Anil Gupta, may I intervene for a while?
Sir.
Dr. Anil Gupta.
Yes, sir.
See, one small point I wanted to mention regarding Professor Debapriya Datta has mentioned in his talk regarding a comprehensive plan for the Department of Science and Technology. So I think it is a very, very
only DST, it is for the country. It should be for the country. Yeah.
So I would like to mention that for the country as a whole, the National Disaster Management Plan 2019, covering all sectors, has already been notified. It is available on the website of NDMA. And what I would like to mention here is that every department of the Government of India, every Ministry of Government of India, and every state government is statutorily required under Section 37 of the Disaster Management Act to prepare a holistic disaster management plan covering the activities of their department in consonance with the National Disaster Management Plan. So since the National Disaster Management Plan has already been cleared by the national authority and it is available, what I request is kindly take the process forward so that for the Department of Science and Technology, whatever is required to be done in a holistic manner, covering mitigation, prevention, etc., all the activities, all the gamut of the activities which are part of the disaster management cycle, in what manner the Science and Technology Department and its initiatives can work. If it can be collated, this is already what you are doing. What Professor Debapriya Datta has mentioned is that this is something which you are already doing, but if the same thing can be put in the form of a plan, and if it can be done in the template of the NDMP 2019, it will be very helpful. Thank you very much.
No,
Thanks.
sir, I understand, and we are aware about NDMP, and we are from the Department of Science and Technology. We are developing the management plan also. My point was different. My point was different, sir. My point is that if you see the Asian Science and Technology, conference or the AST, CDRR, the framework, they focus on the integrations of the science and technology, activities for that. And therefore, I have like shared all those, the points. And my suggestion was that from the science and technological point of view, that because all of us are doing in the different department wise, but all of this have a value chain. This needs to be integrated so that all of this can ultimately strengthen the science policy and the practice this continue. This was my suggestions. We are aware about the NDMP. We are aware about that what we have to do under the disaster, the management plan for each of the department. But this I find is totally absent in the context of the country. Therefore, different ministries and we work separately on the different aspects, and that knowledge doesn't get in a coordinated way to strengthen the science policy practice. That this was my.
No, Professor Datta, thank you very much for the elaboration. I fully agree with you, and I understand the need for bringing out such all-encompassing, across the ministry's policy. But my simple submission is that, the Disaster Management Act was passed by Parliament of India in the year 2005. And last 15 years, we have not been able to get the plan from the from the Department of Science and Technology. So my request is kindly see that whatever is the minimum mandatory statutory requirement of the ministry is fulfilled. And by law, this is a duty of every ministry under Section 37 of the Act to prepare the plan. So kindly take this seriously. I understand the implications of what you have mentioned. There is definitely a need for an umbrella, an overarching mechanism whereby all the constituting elements will talk to one another. I fully understand. But at the same time, it does not absolve each of the constituent units from discharging their duties. So this is very, very important. That is all I thought I should. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Sarma sir. And in fact, both have a very important point of synergy, because when the ministry's DM plan will be prepared, so how ministry is contributing, how that sector is contributing for strengthening and improving disaster risk management efficiency, certainly there will be point of convergence there also, because mitigation, the chapter on mitigation and chapter of mainstreaming, these are two important chapters which will provide that background also. So, and the DST's coordination with other ministries also. So there will be opportunity. Thank you, Dr. Datta, for your presentation and very elaborate presentation. So since Dr. Singh from NCDC has not yet joined, so we will move ahead. In case he is able to join, we will take his remarks. So I would request my faculty colleague Shri Ashish Panda to read out 5-6 key takeaways that we have from the deliberations today that we had before we proceed further. Mr. Ashish Panda, as we discussed, please read out the key takeaways.
Dr. Gupta, I have also joined.
Welcome, sir. Welcome, sir. Welcome, Executive Director NIDM, Major Manoj Kumar Bindal. He could not join because of some technical issues. In fact, in the past 1 or 2 days, we are having this kind of challenges because of the technical thing that, yeah. So, welcome, sir.
So, first of all, I'm very sorry for joining in so late. Even now, my video is not coming. I've joined in from someone else's mobile. I don't know why it has happened, but Murphy's Law always plays good in such times. So, first of all, too late in the day some webinar, but I welcome GVV Sharma ji for coming on this particular webinar, even though he has delegated most of the webinars to other members, but he found this webinar where he thought he should be present. That itself shows the importance of this particular webinar, the topic that he's attaching and NDMA is attaching. It is very important that technology has to be leveraged. And we have seen countless examples where technology has helped us in better mitigation, resilience, whether in response, recovery, everywhere technology is giving us new dimensions to work upon. I will just talk about one issue, that is coherence. Today we are lacking coherence. Coherence is in the sense, let us say, I'll give an example of Indian Meteorological Department. They have a setup of radars everywhere. They have and the Central Water Commission has got their own setup of flood monitoring system all over the countryside. Each state also, in addition, is carrying out various projects where they're getting it funded from various agencies, and they are also setting up a similar parallel project in their state. Now, these two are not talking to each other. There are examples where there are two radars or two atmospheric gauges or rainwater gauges just a kilometer apart, but they're not feeding to each other. They're not feeding into the central resources. So this coherence needs to be brought about, and for every type of hazard, there is a need to be to for that ministry to take control. And if even if some state or any agency has put in their own parallel efforts, that needs to be integrated rather than uh, I'll say competing with them. It should be more of a collaboration and they should be taken on board. There are many private players who have set up their own systems like SkyMet and others, which are also very accurate. But since if they are not being taken on board, they are expanding their own network in a way which they are also giving equal amount of information, prediction, forecasting. But the government is even they have got now cast system, everything. Whatever IMD doing, SkyMet is also duplicating it. Similarly, Cropsy is another organization. So there are many organizations who have gone on a tangent because they are not taken on board. So I think if we want that technology to be leveraged properly, all such like-minded technologies must come on board together and they should be taken along, and it should become a collaborative effort rather than a competitive effort. And that I think will ensure that we will be better prepared. And the second issue is anything to do with technology requires a lot of funding. Today, we are lacking in research. We are lacking in research in a big way that for years we have been dependent upon some other countries to give us the required product. But now that we have gone in for Make in India, Atmanirbhar India Abhiyan, I think the funds for research should be enhanced, and that should be put into that should be encouraged, and hand holding of that research has to be done. And any research which is done, it should see the life cycle. For example, if someone has done a research on a particular landslide, prediction of landslide, so it should not finish there. That person or that organization should be involved with that research for next 7 to 10 years to see the impact, so to see, go through a few iterations of the landslide and keep improving the product. One-time demonstrator like a boutique research, that will not work. And that is why none of the Indian researchers are finding its way in any international arena, nor are they referred to, because it has not been tested and tried and tested over a few iterations and then improved upon. So these are the 2 points which I thought I must bring to the table, because I have not been able to hear balance of the presentation, so I really don't know what all has happened. But for the time being, I'll just say this and rest later. Thank you so much. Over to you, Professor Gupta.
Thank you, sir. One important point you added, that how we are going to work on our institutions and within the science research and science education systems, and to help in boosting the application of science and technology. So that is a very important dimension, and this is important particularly from point of view that when we are calling for Swadeshi, are the even the vocal for local kind of things also, that even the local science and technology interventions, local innovations are also going to be very important. So modern technology, local technology, and then looking at even the blend of the application strategies. So now let us move to the summary points of today's deliberations, and I would request Mr. Panda to read out the key takeaways.
Thank you, Professor Gupta. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
So, thank you. We could hear the words of wisdom and rich experiences from members of the NDMA, NIDM, and distinguished panelists on how science and technology innovations can be used to further the vision of Honorable Prime Minister's 10-point agenda for efficient DRM in our country. Two takeaways I would read about. There is need for people-centric approach for last-mile connectivity in user-friendly manner and in local languages using science and technology innovations. Common alerting protocol, common emergency numbers for alert dissemination, and impact forecasting are important areas for research and development in this regard. We need to reduce lack of coherence among S&T agencies and bodies. There should be adequate funds also for S&T R&D. S&T can help build protocols for risk reduction and risk management for times of crisis when our common sense fails to support us. S&T can help improve use of knowledge, quantify risks, make knowledge actionable, and also help identify black swans, that is our unknown strengths and weaknesses. Role of S&T in reducing the impact of oil spills upon the coast, livelihoods of the people residing there and the biodiversity in that area, and also tsunami warning system, unmanned air vehicles for various DRM activities. The BMTPC, we learned that, has identified 55 new innovative construction technology systems, and we need to encourage innovative research in national and local science in this regard. S&T can also be a tool to mainstream DRM in developmental activities. Science policy practice have to come forward for this. Research innovations and collaborations among the science and technology community are need of the hour. Various DST initiatives in DRM were showcased, and such success stories should also be replicated across the country. So eventually the message is very clear that DRM needs identification of new science and knowledge, their nourishment and development, adoption, improvement in technology-led innovations, tools and products, and lastly, convert them into businesses and activities on ground for last mile connectivity. So basically, if we want to fulfill the dreams of Honorable Prime Minister's 10-point agenda on DRM, the SDGs, the fulfilling Sendai framework of action roadmaps, and also the Paris Agreement on climate change, S&T and innovations have to be given its right due and importance in our policy planning and implementation on the ground. Thank you, sir. Gupta, sir.
Dr. Gupta, would you be giving some time for the participants?
Yes, sir. We can have 10 minutes or 15 minutes time for participants to respond and give some other points which have not yet been flagged. So we'll open the session for participants. The forum is open for the suggestions and inputs from the participants. They can Anjali, Dr. Anjali, please allow the participants to raise their hands. The participants can raise their hands, and then we can.
I think the facility of chat box can be used. If anybody would like to ask, they can mention in the chat box.
So in the chat box, they can write down their question. We can take up the question from it there itself.
So meanwhile, when while the participants are maybe thinking and they can be writing some question, can a moderator ask a question, sir?
Yes, of course.
Sir, my point is that initially NIDM and NDMA, we have been organizing this India Disaster Management Congress. Basically, that was the unique academic forum where the science and technology communities across all the institutions and around 500, 600 papers were coming on various dimensions of disaster management, and that was a forum. So there also it has been discussed that only few scientific domains could contribute significantly for advancing disaster risk reduction, but there are other domains which have the potential, but they were not, they could not be in the mainstream of S&T contribution. For example, what role the food technology can play, what role the biotechnology can play. For example, when we are talking of slope erosion risk mitigation, the eco technologies, that how vegetation and the blend of the biological sciences and engineering sciences can play the important role. What role chemical technology has to play, what role other for example, even the simpler thing that like leather technology. There are a number of institutions in the country, so probably we can think of doing some kind of a mapping of the science and technology institutions under the country, under various umbrella. For example, within Ministry of Agriculture, within Ministry of Health, within Ministry of Science and Technology, there are so many institutions, and there some kind of assessment of potentials and opportunities. So sir, I would request if you can give some guidance on this, that should we do this, should we think of this, and how can we do this, sir?
I think it is perfectly desirable, and I think this is what Professor Devapriya Datta from the Science and Technology Department has also mentioned. There is a need for coming together of all the different streams. So if NIDM can take lead in this, it will be nothing like it, and NDMA will be certainly interested in supporting this. So we should take this forward. But the forum of India Disaster Management Congress, I do not know whether that would be the appropriate forum. Because meanwhile, what has happened? Meanwhile, so many changes have also happened.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But along with the science and technology, scientific and technical organizations, we should definitely have a platform where all these issues are discussed and taken forward. It's a very good idea, and I think NIDM and NDMA should work more closely on this and take this forward. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And then there is a question from Dr. Anuradha Paul from the participant side. She is asking that for promoting science and technology and research, can NIDM and DMA collaborate with universities or support the universities and other institutions in their R&D efforts? So this is a question, sir. So I think DST is already having a scheme where they give project funding. Sir, do NDMA also take these lines?
I would like to mention that this year is a historically very, very important year, that the Union Cabinet has accepted the recommendations of the 15th Finance Commission. So we have actually two important windows. One is the window for the National Mitigation Fund, Disaster Mitigation Fund, and also State Disaster Mitigation Fund. There is a total 20% of the overall kitty available for mitigation. If certain activities can be justified as mitigation, they could be certainly considered under the mitigation. There is a mechanism that has been prescribed. And similarly, there is another window with 10% allocation for what is called preparedness and capacity building under the disaster management. Both these windows, the guidelines are in finalization. We have actually asked for the comments of the state governments and the union territories. And very soon, the Ministry of Home Affairs is going to notify these guidelines. And once these guidelines are notified, which I hope that it will be done in the coming 2 weeks, it will be possible for the universities to give proposals which can be considered. If the proposal can have a justification of directly dealing with capacity building, or a research which will help in mitigation, whether it is a structural measure or non-structural measure, research would come as a non-structural activity. But if any such mitigation activities can be justified, certainly they can be posed. But as I have mentioned, the guidelines are in the process of consultation with the states. Very soon they will be finalized.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. One question has come from Mr. Gupta. He is asking that usually in early warning systems we have we have gone very ahead and we have improved our early warning systems. Are we also thinking of expanding the horizon of early warning system by including even the parameters or the components like the changing animal behavior kind of things? So, do we have any comment on this, sir, from the panelists? Do we consider animal behavior before disasters as a parameter?
Would Professor Ravi Sinha like to take this question?
So thank you. So for certain kinds of disasters, it is well established that animals can have a very effective role. And there are actually two kinds of roles of animals for early warning. The first is indicating that there is going to be an event, and secondly, indicating that there is going to be a severe event. So animal behavior has been very effective, particularly in the disasters which are having some element of vibrations, either ground-based vibrations or air-based vibrations. So or related to smells. So for example, subterranean gas leakage and so on. So yes, it is possible to do that. In India, we don't have a structured way of using it, but it is an area which is catching a lot of attention now. And not so much in indicating whether an impending disaster is coming, but in impending major disaster is coming, because they require a certain threshold for the smells and all to become strong. So that's why while modern sensors would be able to detect these things too, they're not able to detect whether they are strong or not. So animals do have a role, and I also believe that there should be due attention paid to it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for giving more detailed information on this. And
sir, if I may like to add to this point, sir, I just wish to add to this.
Yeah,
To
briefly
the
you can add.
Yes, sir, yes, sir, very briefly.
Yeah, briefly.
So I think there's another aspect to it. We still lack a lot of documentation of these very, very small local level, traditional aspects. Because just say tsunami ke baad hua tha, there were studies and all. But if we start recording even international and national such initiatives, that the participant had mentioned that I think in Bangalore and Bareilly, they've just started studying these behaviors. So tapping them, having these informations, and then maybe somewhere relating it to warnings at a local level can prove some benefit of some benefit.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Sushma. I think it is a good idea. Now there's no more question, but only one suggestion has come, and I think the experts and panelists may like to take it for consideration. One is that the science and technology related documents are usually available in English. So the suggestion is that science and technology application related documents and guidelines and this practice handbook, if the relevant parts can be provided in the regional languages or the state the languages where of the masses, so that can be useful for popularizing the recommendations and also helping in the implementation of those kind of strategies and plans. So this is a suggestion has come, sir.
Very good, very good. We should work.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So thank you, sir. And I think no more questions are here. And so I would now request Sri GVV Sharma, sir, Member Secretary of NDMA, to give the closing remarks. Before that, I would request the Executive Director and NIDM to say a few words before I invite Member Secretaries. ED and IDM, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Anil Gupta, for such an interesting topic. And this is a topic on which a lot needs to be discussed because slowly and slowly, to save lives, we need to depend upon technology more and more, and also to make the country disaster resilient. We need to use technology in a big way, whether it be virtual reality or virtual screening or whichever way, computer aided designing. We need to use it in a big way, and that support can only be given by this government. An individual or an institute, it is not possible for them because these are very, very heavy finance related projects, and they are long-term projects. So I think with this, what Member Secretary had just spoken about, the 20% mitigation window and 10% capacity development window, I think we should propel the state governments to go in for such type of projects more and more, and maybe take a action taken report on this as to how much of that really went into leveraging technology, science and technology for mitigation, for preparedness, or for response. And I think that will pave the way, because calling out and somehow capturing this data from the state governments and then collating it, I think that can be done by the MHA, because the right response they'll get. We will be able to motivate those state governments who are not doing it, and of course, and incentivize those state governments who are doing it. But finally, no more we should have an aim that no more we should be losing any life, no more we should be losing infrastructure which could have been saved had we used leveraged science or technology. And the resilience part, that the loss to livelihood or business continuity, if it can be reduced in whichever way through various factors, that should be looked into. I thank all the panelists who have come here, Dr. Devprata, Dr. Ravi Sinha, and special thanks to Member Secretary. And once again, I am sorry I was not there in the beginning, which was the first time it has happened that I missed out my slot. But still, I'm lucky that I joined in at the last minute. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you, Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal, sir. And now I would request Shri GVV Sharma, sir, Member Secretary, NDMA, for his closing remarks. Sir, please.
No, thank you very much. I think it has been a very enlightening discussion, and the expert members have mentioned their views very, very clearly. And I think the lessons drawn should be carried forward. And it is very, very important that the necessary convergence among all the science and technology organizations, as well as other ministries and other agencies, should be continued, and it should be strengthened. And NDMA has been having a series of discussions with various scientific organizations in the country, including the Ministry of Earth Sciences and its constituent parts, including the inquiries, the National Seismology Center, and all other agencies. But as I have mentioned, it requires more concerted, more convergence-based approach, and we have to keep in mind the ultimate requirements of the community and the people at the ground level. And if that is kept in mind, I'm sure that the best products of science and technology can be applied to the DRM very, very effectively. And I compliment NIDM for having taken this process, and this needs to be carried further. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for your guidance and your encouragement, as always. Having an opportunity to work with you for more than 10 years, in fact. So that is really a great thing for us, that being associated with you. Now this is the time that we extend formal thanks to all who contributed to this. So my colleague, Dr. Sushma Guleria, I would request her to propose a formal vote of thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Sushma.
On behalf of the National Institute of Disaster Management, I foremostly take this opportunity to extend thank you to our guest keynote address speaker, Shri GVV Sharma, sir, Honorable Member Secretary, NDMA. Thank you, sir, for sharing your views on the imperative need to integrate science and technology into the DRR initiatives. Thank you for joining us, taking out time and being there throughout the event. I take this opportunity to extend our thanks to our Executive Director, Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal, sir. Sir has emphasized on the need for coherence very rightly. And sir has been a backbone for all the endeavors being carried out by NIDM. Thank you for joining us. I take this opportunity to extend thanks to all our esteemed panelists, Dr. Ravi Sinha ji. We understand that it's a wake-up call for India to make advancements in the field of science and technology to match up to the international levels. Thank you to Dr. Neeraj Sinha, sir, who had emphasized on being technologically prepared. Dr. Shailesh Agrawal, sir, who had emphasized on the need for integrating science and technology into national and local level initiatives. We missed out on listening to Dr. Sujit Singh, but I hope that in any of our future programs we would try and have his views with us. Dr. Debapriya Datta, sir, who had rightly emphasized on the need for science and society convergence. Thank you to all the valuable speakers for their insightful inputs in the subject matter. You always need a good team and the best of spirits to achieve good results. So needless to say, we take this opportunity to thank our program, this particular webinar leader, our head, Professor Anil Kumar Gupta, sir. Thank you for being the guiding light, always with us. I also extend a warm thanks to Dr. Anjali Agarwal for her diligent effort in coordinating the entire webinar. Shri Ashish Pandaji for bringing out some of the key inputs. Above all, I take this opportunity to thank all the participants for joining in this initiative, and we look forward to many more such collaborative future engagements together in taking this endeavor and making India a more resilient nation. Thank you all for joining us in this webinar event. Be safe.
Thank you. I extend thanks to Dr. Sushma also and the entire team of NIDM, NDMA. From NDMA also a number of members were part of the team who were supporting from the back, to all the consultants who were associated, and all IT team of NIDM who has been supporting, and Dr. Anjali Barwal who was hosting this program for my team. She is research associate working under the WHO project, and Dr. Sujit Kumar Singh, who was joining, was also to refer on NIDM's endeavor of preparing National Health Adaptation Plan that we have recently submitted. So with this, thanks to everyone for making it a success. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.